recap of what happened in part one of this incredible story. Gabriel was concerned about gang violence in Mexico. He feared for the safety of his son Juan. But when the gangs approached Juan to try to recruit him, that was the last straw. Gabriel knew he had to get his son out of that environment. He felt that this was the best opportunity for Juan in the United States. Gabriel and Juan crossed into the United States illegally, but once in the U.S., they began to assimilate. Gabriel got a job, Juan attended school. The two were off to a good start, and things were looking up for them, until one day they happened to be at Juan's school when a mass shooting occurred. The pair escaped, but both came face to face with gunmen and witnessed the shooting and killing of several people. The police wanted to interview them along with other witnesses. They feared that if they spoke to police, their immigration status would get them sent back to Mexico. Now we welcome back immigration attorney and advocate Andres Meher to help us complete the story and discuss the tragedy, challenges, and opportunities Gabriel and Juan's situation presents.
So, what do you got for us today? Gabriel, Juan, it's a horrific story, but unfortunately one we hear way too often in the United States lately.
Yeah, Andres, this is clearly a tragic story for everyone involved, but it seems particularly tragic for Gabriel and Juan. They both witnessed unspeakable violence and traumatizing events, but now they're afraid of talking to police because they fear deportation. I mean, let's start with that. So do undocumented immigrants need to be concerned about talking to the police if they witnessed or were a victim of a crime?
So generally, if they're a victim of a crime, no, there are certain laws that protect them, like a U visa or a T visa or an S visa. Today, we're going to talk about a U visa. But the whole point of that is that immigrants are generally afraid to talk to the police, particularly when they're victims of a crime. If they qualify for a U visa, not only do they not need to be afraid, they actually will get legal status. But to answer your question, should they be afraid? Well, if they have an order of arrest, they're going to get arrested, right? But they're not getting arrested because they're undocumented. That's a federal issue, not a state issue. But they would be arresting if Gabriel, for example, failed to pay child support and has an order for arrest. If he was arrested for a crime and didn't show up to court, or if he has charges pending, even if they were 10 years ago. Yes, you have reason to fear if the police is actively looking for you because there's an order of arrest, sure. But again, you're not being arrested or detained based on being a victim or in your involvement in this incident. It's just because you have something else. That would be the same if I had such a problem as a U.S. citizen, I would also be arrested. It has nothing to do with immigration status.
Okay. So I'm correct when I say undocumented immigrants have nothing to fear from contact with the police if they have not committed a crime.
If they have not committed a crime, or I should say if they're not sought after by the police. Again, failure to pay child support is not in and of itself a crime, right? If I got a traffic ticket or I lent my car to someone, they got a parking ticket and I didn't show up because I didn't know about the ticket and my friend was not so nice and didn't tell me about it. I didn't do anything wrong. But all of a sudden I have an order of arrest out for me. So I don't want to say if they didn't commit a crime, if they have no reason to believe that they're being investigated by the police.
Okay.
I think that covers a broader spectrum. That's all. But your statement is generally true.
Okay. And it's interesting because you're really making me think here. So I really want to know, is there ever a situation when an undocumented immigrant should not report what they've seen or have been a victim of a crime?
Victim of a crime should always, particularly if they're undocumented, because they may get a benefit out of it. But really, from the point of view of society wants victims to report incidents to the police. The only time somebody should be concerned is when they have an order of arrest. They should fix that first and then talk to the police. Because what happens? I talk to the police, they'll hear me out, they'll ask me the questions. So we have a client where he has a criminal defense attorney. We were hired to give an opinion on his case. Actually, he came to file for citizenship and to file for his wife, and we found out, well, he was charged with sex abuse of a minor. Now, what happened? He called the police saying he was a victim of carjacking, that people were actively looking at it. Well, those people happened to be the parents of the two 15-year-old kids that, he was trying to solicit. So he came in, police investigated, and then they connected the dots. Oh, wait a minute. police call, the parents called, explained what's going on. This car matches that description. What's going on here? So he committed a crime, but he said he was a victim. He reported it. He wound up getting arrested and being charged with the crime because his actions were at the same time, and he volunteered information that resulted in his arrest. Right? So yes, that individual needs to be concerned because of what he did right then and there. I mean, I can't fix stupid. Sorry. I know that sounds terrible, but if you're going to do bad things, don't call the police and complain that you're the victim. You're just inviting that. It has nothing to do with Gabriel and Juan, just giving you an example of when calling the police might not be a good idea. Now, it turns out it's going to be he's got a good outcome. He has a good criminal defense attorney. He has a good immigration attorney. He's going to be a U.S. citizen, and he's going to be able to file for his wife. At the end of the day, this was a nonviolent offense. What he tried to do and what he did do were two very different things. And in the U.S., we tend to, doing is usually harsher than trying to do. Immigration doesn't make a difference. Trying or doing is the same thing for immigration purposes. But messaging somebody with inappropriate communication is not the same as sexual molestation. Mm-hmm. It's a very big difference.
And I imagine that's a bad idea regardless of your legal status.
Oh, yeah. But, doing that is a bad idea, everyone, in case you didn't mean to tell you. But if you're not a U.S. citizen, well, if you're convicted, the bad news is you get an all-expense paid trip back home. And it's a one-way ticket.
Oh, it's not a lottery we want to try to play.
Back to Gabriel and Juan.
Yeah, actually,
afraid, particularly him. He has no back. He has no. There's nothing in his past that would lead him to be concerned. Now, if he was caught at the border and he didn't go to court and he has an order of deportation, okay, he might be concerned. Most police agencies aren't going to pick that up, but sometimes they do. And increasingly, databases across the country are more interconnected. So maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's 10 years from now. But at some point, police are going to know things like that anywhere in the country.
Okay. Now, this is just making me curious. I'm playing devil's advocate here, so bear with me. But, what would happen if the police did detain an undocumented immigrant when they came forward to report a crime?
Well, if they did, it would be for reasons separate and apart for being undocumented.
Okay.
Because being undocumented may have violated our laws, but it's not a crime per se. And local law enforcement doesn't generally have the authorization to detain somebody based on their immigration status. They don't have the knowledge and experience. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It doesn't mean you don't have biased police officers that concoct something just to be able to call ICE. Yes, I've seen that a lot. But generally speaking, that is not something that you should be afraid of. Most law enforcement realize that doing things like that will isolate them with the immigrant community. And look, if you're brown skin and you're looking for somebody in the immigrant community, so let's say they're from Jamaica, right? Well, if you don't speak the language, if you don't know the people and you look like me, it's going to be hard to get their trust initially. So doing things like that is counter to the interest of law enforcement. Doesn't mean some people don't do it. We've all heard stories in Arizona, particularly in Texas. It can happen. So if you're here without status, yes, you have reason to worry. Stepping out of your door is at risk. Everything you do puts you at risk. Some things increase that risk. Talking to the police when you're a victim shouldn't, but sometimes it does. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to say everything's going to be fantastic. Generally, you have nothing to worry about it until you do.
Right. It makes a lot of sense. At the end of the day, what has to happen is you got to find a way somehow. If you're fortunate enough to make that journey over successfully, your next step has always got to be, what can I do to protect my rights? That's right.
And that's where talking to someone like us helps.
I see.
What else you got for me?
Okay, well, just wondering, now that this tragic event happened, Is there any silver lining for Gabriel and Juan? Is there any way to turn this into a positive for them? And I use that lightly because there's
Right.
no
So
positive.
I can't change what happened, right? None of us can. There is something that's called the uvisa. We introduced it before. It's for victims of violent crime. Now, if Gabriel or Juan had been shot, well, they're clearly victims. Now, what happens when you're involved in the shooting, but when you're not actually shot? Okay, that becomes harder. But when you're talking about a mass shooting event where everybody that's there is traumatized, it's a different story. So uvisa would be an awesome option for Juan or Gabriel. And because Gabriel's underage, it'd usually be Juan filing, and then his son as his derivative beneficiary. Now, if Gabriel was an adult, let's say they were both working together and he was over 21, well, then Juan would have to file for himself. Gabriel would have to file for himself. So uvisa, victim of violent crime, must communicate with the police. There has to be law enforcement participation. Here, it's automatic. The police show up. But what happens if this was a shooting at my house and no one called the police? So here, police show up. There is police involvement. We just need to document and prove what happened. We'll go to the elements in a moment. I'm sure you're going to ask me, but I want to make sure I answer this question. Back on. So uvisa is an option. Stay tuned for next week when we go into detail. What are the requirements and what is the process? What does Gabriel and Juan need to do in order to be able to achieve legal status in the United States? But for purposes of today, it's important to say, yes, they have an option. Yes, they were victims. And yes, there is a silver lining. Can't change what happened, but there is a way for them and their family to achieve legal status in the United States. It's a path to get a visa, which then becomes a green card, which then becomes citizenship. Now, he has to file and qualify for each one of them, but it is a path for citizenship. It's not automatic. He has to do something at every step. But the good news is him and his entire family will be able to stay, whether they're in the United States or outside the United States. If they're outside, they'll be able to come into the United States. It takes a long time to get it, but there is a solid option for them.
Oh, great. That's exciting. I'm really looking forward to talking about that subject next. So sounds like even out of a tragic situation, there's still ways for undocumented immigrants who are victims of crime to witness a crime, to stay in the United States and get legal status. In next week's episode of Welcome to America, we're going to talk more about solutions to immigration problems for victims of crime in the United States. Thankfully, most people will probably never have to go through a mass shooting to get legal status.
God, I hope not.
But immigrants do fall victim to crime much more often than the U.S. citizens, which is sad. So it is certainly important to watch next week's show to learn more about immigration solutions for victims of crime. If you found today's Welcome to America helpful, please click like and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. If you have a different immigration problem or want to share your own immigration story, comment below and tell us about it. We'd love to feature your story in a future episode. We want to see you solve your immigration problems, and I sincerely hope we'll be saying welcome to America to you soon.